Hi, and welcome to the 10 square metre workshop. Regular viewers will know I've been recently getting into hand woodworking. You know, planes, chisels, that sort of stuff. And I'm running out of space to store all these new tools I've been buying. I do, however, have space in my wall where I could put a tool chest in the traditional style. As soon as one talks about traditional, the mind turns to the Studley tool chest. If you're not familiar with it, look it up. All woodworkers drool over it. Now, I'm not a piano maker of 40 years, so I probably can't achieve the standard that he did. But I can make a more provincial model. Instead of a Studley tool chest, a Dudley tool chest. So that's what I'm going to make. Better get started. First step in the build is to saw all the carcass sides to shape. These were milled in the thicknesser to give me my 8 carcass pieces. I first planed the edges to get them smooth, level, square and to the correct thickness. As a new convert to hand planing, I'm amazed at the quality of finish and accuracy you can get, provided your planing blade is sharp enough, of course. For the faces, I'm not yet sufficiently confident of planing, so it's back to the sander. With the boards now silky smooth, I can square up the end on the shooting board. They can then all be marked to length, cut about ½ mm over size in the bandsaw, and then trim to length. This is really the most accurately I've ever cut wood by hand. Usually relied on machine tools. But now on to the dovetails. I've done these before, but not often. There are enough YouTube videos on how to lay out a dovetail for me to just add to them. Suffice it to say, I used the gauges I made previously with a Dudley Japanese saw to make a start. With the verticals cut, I place one board on top of the other and offset them sideways at the bottom to allow for the thickness of the saw cut. Make sure it's flush. Then mark with the saw, which has the same curve. With all the verticals cut, it's time to come in with a coping saw and remove the majority of the waste. That's the first one cut. It's a tad tight, but hey, that's better than a tad loose. After I got all 4 dovetails done, I realised I'd made it too big. I was filling the existing space instead of making it a proper size. So off come the ends. Having recut 2 of the dovetails, I'm now ready to put in the rebate to hold the back. I'm using nominal 9mm ply. It's actually 8.5, but that'll be 9 after it gets veneered. So a 10x10 rebate. So I set 10mm high to the bit and 10mm back for the fence and my digital router. See other videos for how I built this. I have to start and stop the cut just in from the corners. With those cut, I can start assembly. With the parts just notched in, I can check the height of the sides. The side should be 1.5mm lower to take the piano hinge. Yep, that's okay. A couple of corners were just a hair under, so I planed a little off them. Clamped into position while it sets, I can now adjust the corners of the rebate so the back fits. And here it is with the back temporarily in place. The other half of the frame is made in exactly the same way. Here it is dry fitted together. Dry fitting the two together, I found the height was about 1/4 mm out. That's extremely good. and well within the reach of sanding. Width, I deliberately made it a couple of millimetres wider because it's going to get cut in two. The last thing you want is to be short. It will be joined using brass piano hinge, which is 3mm thick. So I just need to adjust the side slots to make sure they're exactly that. It's now time to cut out the material for the front. While I have the MFT top out, I'll cut out the front panels. They're out of 5mm ply. And here are the two panels, cut cross grain as you can see, so that the veneer on each side will act as the final ply. Next I shall be doing the veneering, starting with the back. This takes 3 strips of my mahogany sapele veneer, and I'll be using lightly diluted PVA glue applied with a sponge. Applied to both the back and veneer before pressing down. And a layer of cling film to stop it sticking, a board over the top, then lots of heavy things on top. The front panels, being smaller, can be just clamped. I'm taking the risk of doing both sides at once. Released the next morning, it's adhered well. So peeling mahogany on one side and something more exotic on the other. And the back? Yeah, that's fairly good too. There's a wee bit of glue seepage at the joins, but that will sand off. There's certainly no gaps. That's fine. After trimming and a light sanding by hand with 320 grit, and it's ready to go in. Being double-sided, the panel needed more care and trimming, but the result is very satisfactory. Almost exactly 6mm thick now. With the frame held square, I can now screw in the back. Purists would say I should have veneered the back as well. Purists can make their own. And here it is, all screwed in. No minimalism here. No glue, so I can remove the back if I need to, but I need a pretty good reason. With all the parts for the front of the chest cut, shaped and sanded, it's time to do some machining. First step is the rebate to fit the frame. This is 6mm deep and it's the width of the frame. The resulting rebate fits over the edge of the frame, like so, flush with the outside. The rebates at the end of the cross pieces are first cut roughly with a Japanese saw and then cut accurately in my milling machine. So much control. You get an almost polished finish to the cut. It was at this point that I realised that the 3mm cutter I had was actually 4mm. But hey, Amazon same day delivery, and early next morning I'm ready to go. The task here is to put in the rebates that hold the panels. This shows the overall section. Next came a 6mm rebate around the panels. And that's how it fits from the top and underneath. Pretty pleased with that. There was then some fine tuning. I got the panels a good fit between the frames. I can't tell you what a difference it makes being able to dial in any dimension on the router. Next step is to make the side frames fit by notching the ends. I did this in the mill, of course, which gives this nice accurate piece of machining, so that the frame fits nicely into the corner. Same on the other end, and it's a snug fit. With the centre verticals trimmed, it's time to cut the case in two. I left a couple of millimetres in the width to allow for cutting in two and then shooting square. With all the vertical dimensions set, I can now measure the length of the top and bottom pieces. First I form a tenon on the end to fit into the vertical and carefully mark the length. This is the resultant joint. And that's one end done, just three more to do. The middle framing piece will be dowelled between these two faces, and that requires a jig. It's not unusual for machinists to make specific jigs just for one task. There's a saying that only 40% of your time on a mill is machining, the rest is preparing and jig making. I'm making this out of a piece of 12mm scrap. First I face one edge and cut it to size in the bandsaw. After squaring all the edges, I mounted it flush with the end of the vise, and then I removed 3mm from the face. I shall now flip it over, once again referencing the end of the vise and doing the same to the other side. I then found the centre and moved the drill bit to 15mm from one end, and I'm ready to put the dowel holes in. And here they are. In use, the guide fits against the slot and the face of the frame. Last step before assembling this half is to cut the asymmetric space for the lock. Can't remember why I thought this was a good idea. First step is to glue and tap together the dowel joints. Then the two side pieces, slide in the panel, next framing piece, and finally the top frame and dovetail. I'm clamping it over the bottom frame until it dries, but actually it was a pretty good fit. With the other door made in exactly the same way, I could mate up that central section where there's an overlap. I jacked up one side, laid it over the top of the other and scored through, so I had a line to work to. It's then a matter of fitting, removing small amounts of material until the two mate. As you get closer, a feeler gauge becomes useful. It's often difficult to see where the high spots are. How long does this go on for? Well, until you get tired, hungry, or both, and decide it's good enough. With the second piano hinge installed, it fits. And so, that's the basic case made. Lots more to do, but that's for future episodes. See you then. Bye for now.